three modules, starting from module number 4, wherein we are going to talk about different types of environments, tools, and deployment strategy. And module number 5, where we are going to discuss about determining data management strategy and also determining integration and interface strategies. So starting from module number 4, 5, and 6 will be discussed today. So yesterday, we talked about the introduction to solution architect role, introduction to the course, as well as we have seen how various fast track interactions would be managed. And we have also seen the solution blueprint document and various workshops associated with it. Today, we are going to get a bit more deeper into more technical concepts like environment tools and deployment strategy, along with data management and integration strategies. So let's get started with module number 4, which is defining environments, tools, and deployment strategy. So whenever you are starting with finance and operations, you may have to provision various environments for various types of users. So you need to have a clear understanding of environment planning. You need to define application lifecycle management and deployment strategies. You would be using LCS and Azure DevOps tools. In this module, we will be discussing about all these three things: understanding environment planning, defining an application lifecycle management and deployment strategy, also using LCS and Azure DevOps tools. So let's begin with major concepts related to environment planning. So environments exist for certain purpose. The major reasons why an environment exists, for example, would be for development purpose, or would be for system testing purpose, or would be for user acceptance testing purpose. So depending upon the reason why you need an environment, you may require different tiers of environments. For example, tier 1 for developing, or tier 1 for unit testing. You may require tier 2 or above for user acceptance testing. So based on the environment purpose, you may require different tiers of environment. And based on the tiers, you would see various environment topologies. For example, tier 1 would be for develop, build, and test. So topology represents the composition of the environment and ultimately its purpose. And regardless of the tiers, or regardless of the topology, or regardless of the purpose, you would choose any of the deployment strategy, like for example, cloud hosted or VHD. For deploying your environment, for example, for tier 1 defines where exactly it is hosted, whether cloud hosted or VHD. So understanding these major concepts are important for environment planning. Apart from this, there are also different environment types. You must have heard of standard environment, add-on environment, cloud-hosted environments, or VHD. Standard environment, it includes a production environment and a tier 2 standard acceptance test environment. Your standard licensing includes this. And any additional environment that you require can be bought as an add-on environment. So it is in a Microsoft managed subscription that the customer has purchased in addition to the standard offer. There can also be additional cloud hosted environment, which would be an additional tier 1 environment that is managed by the customer or the partner in their Microsoft Azure subscription. Apart from that, you can also find environment VHD or environment image, which is an environment which is hosted on premises using a virtual hard disk that can be downloaded from lifecycle services. So in order to plan your environment, you need to have a clear understanding of these concepts. What is an environment purpose? What are the different environment topologies? What is an environment tier? Or what are the different deployment strategies for tier one environment, for example? What exactly is included in your standard cloud offering? What are add-on environments? What are cloud hosted environments? Or what are environment image or VHD? So environment planning is really important. Environment planning describes the environments that are needed during and after implementation. So you'll be provided like a matrix. And this matrix will contain the type, the topology, deployment option, due date, and other key information. It would be a living document which you would be revisiting at each key project milestone. Why do you need to plan your environment? Environment planning is needed so that it can enable the project team members to deliver their tasks. It provides you with clarity. It clarifies upfront the potential extra environment costs. It also avoids project delays with the last minute discovery of missing environments. So now let's see the differences between tier 1 environments and other environments. Tier 1 environment is a one box environment. All components are installed on the same server. It uses SQL Server, and the architecture is different when it compares to the production environment. It is made to maximize the efficiency of development team. It can be deployed in two different ways, as a VHD, virtual hard disk, or it can be deployed on cloud as cloud hosted environment, which can be managed within your customer subscription. You would be performing all your development tasks as well as unit testing on your one box environment using your tier 1 environment. You should not be performing UAT, user acceptance test, or conduct any performance testing on your tier 1 environment. So these are the do's and don'ts of tier 1 environment. I hope what is an tier 1 environment as well as the do's and do nots of tier 1 environments is clear. Coming to tier 2 and above environments. Tier 2 and higher are multi-box environments. Components are installed on multiple servers. It uses Azure SQL, unlike tier 1 environment, which uses SQL Server. The architecture is pretty similar, is same as a production, despite sizing would be different. And these are only available as standard or as add-on environment. And it cannot be hosted under the customers or partners Azure subscription. You would be using tier 2 and above to perform UAT, or to perform performance testing, you would be using tier 4, tier 5, or other higher environments. So I hope the basic differences between tier 1 and tier 2 environments are clear. The major differences would be tier 1 environments are one box where all components are installed on the same server, typically used for development and unit testing. And the architecture is different compared to the production. Whereas tier 2 and above, which are typically used for user acceptance testing or for performance testing, the architecture is similar to the production environment. It uses Azure SQL. Here are the various capabilities of cloud and on-prem deployment options. Microsoft Dynamics 365 allows you to deploy your solution either on cloud or on premises. So deployment options, the capabilities would vary based on infrastructure, data location, trustee, other capabilities as well. First of all, the cloud hosted environment or the environments that are hosted on cloud would be fully managed by Microsoft Cloud Service, and it would be located in Microsoft managed data centers. On premises would be managed by customer, or it would be in partner managed infrastructure. It follows a disconnected data center, and data would reside locally. Cloud deployments, Microsoft is responsible for as a data trustee, whereas on premises, customer is the one who is responsible. Application lifecycle management would be managed by Microsoft, and customer would access to these application lifecycle management and telemetry data using lifecycle services. Lifecycle services is a tool that you use with finance and operations or other D365 applications in order to manage the application lifecycle of these applications. ALM will be taken care by customer or partner by making use of their cloud-based ALM if at all you're deploying your solution on premises. Cloud allows you for higher availability as well as disaster recovery options that will be also available, and also provides you with a sandbox environment. On premises, automated deployment and telemetry happens using LCS. There are other differences as well based on whether you choose to deploy on cloud or on premises. But these are a few key capabilities of these different kinds of deployments. Application lifecycle management is the management of computer programs, which includes managing requirements, software architecture, software development, software maintenance, change management, continuous integration, project release, and release management. Whenever you are implementing an application for your organization, it goes through a life cycle, starting from analysis, development, design development, testing, operate, and maybe it can go to maintenance mode. So during any application goes through these phases. So you will have to manage all these different phases of your application. There are various concepts related to application lifecycle management. For example, ALM methodology. ALM methodology stands for the methodology that you would be using in order to manage your application lifecycle. This can be like waterfall methodology, agile methodology, sure step by Microsoft, spiral methodology, etc. Business process modeling. So your entire business would be divided into various business processes. And these business processes can have sub-processes. So you would have a detailed documentation related to this business process modeling. You need a place where you can store your source code. Whenever you are working with finance and operations, customization, you require developers. Developers work on their individual virtual machines, and they will have their own unique instance of Visual Studio. So each developer at the end of the day would be collaborating with other developers for source code using a source control. You may be having various deployment phases and also various processes related to deployment. Your application might go through continuous updates and upgrades. You may want to create certain branching strategy to store your source code. Maybe like you want to store your code that is being developed from the source code that are already developed and the code that is ready to be tested. So you may be following certain branching strategy. There are various tools available to manage all these different processes. Like you've got Azure DevOps, which can be used for source control as well as used for collaboration between different users within your organization. There are tools for creating deployable packages. There are models. There are different kinds of environments. There are tools like SysTest framework, RSAT, etc. And there are also certain good practices that your application lifecycle management should align with for strategy and governance, for deployment, for environment, choosing an environment, for source control, automation testing, even for quality control. So there are various application lifecycle management concepts that you need to be familiar with. Finance and operations is never complete without Microsoft Power Platform. It is equally important to understand and realize various capabilities of Microsoft Power Platform, which can be used anytime to extend your finance and operations applications. Power Platform is a no-code, low-code platform by Microsoft, which provides you with four major tools. We have got Power BI, Power Apps, Power Automate, and Power Virtual Agents. Power BI is a business intelligence tool. It's a self-service business intelligence tool, which allows you to bring your data, get data, connect to any data source, flat files or live data, bring data into Power BI. You would be able to apply transformations on this data. You would be able to clean the data, transform the data, and create visualizations with the help of this data, and later share it with the concerned team. Power Apps is an application development tool which will allow you to build fully functional model-driven applications or canvas applications or portals. We've got Power Automate, which is an automation tool which allows you to connect between various connectors, create triggers, and take actions based on these triggers. You can initiate a flow based on a time-based trigger or even on a basis of an action-based trigger. Power Virtual Agents are used to create chatbots. You would be able to create fully functional chatbots without writing any code with the help of Power Virtual Agents. Earlier, in order to create a chatbot, you needed two sets of people, a set of developers and a set of system subject matter experts. Now, with this no-code, low-code technology, subject matter experts can directly build fully functional chatbots and integrate it with their system to enhance the productivity of human agents. So these are four major tools provided it can be used anytime to extend the capabilities of finance and operations. Let's say you may want to build a report from your finance and operations data. You can connect to Power BI using OData, and you will be able to create visualizations and also embed these visualizations back onto finance and operations. You may want to create your own Canvas application and embed that application onto finance and operations. Or you may want to build an application based on finance and operations data. Or you may want to connect the model-driven applications, like, for example, Dynamics 365 sales, marketing, customer service, or field service to finance and operations. You may want to extend the workflow capabilities that are provided by finance and operations. So all these situations, you would be able to use Power Platform to extend the capabilities of your finance and operations applications. Power Platform also comes with AI builders, data connectors, and a data platform called Dataverse. Dataverse is also called as Common Data Service because Dataverse comes with data added to it based on the common data model. Now, the model-driven applications that are built on Power Apps connect to Dataverse. And all the model-driven applications from Dynamics 365, including Dynamics 365 Sales, Marketing, Field Service, and Customer Service, uses Dataverse as its primary data source or as its only data source. As model-driven applications would only be able to use a single data source, which is Dataverse. With that, Dataverse makes Dynamics 365 one-stop shop for all your business requirements. This way, you would be able to use your application, you would be able to extend your solution beyond the limitation of finance and operations as well. So it is important to understand, identify these use cases of these different applications so that you would be able to include these extensions when planning for your environment. What is Azure DevOps? Azure DevOps is a suite of services that provides an end-to-end tool chain for building, testing, and deployment of any application to any cloud or on-premises. Azure DevOps provides you with various tools like Azure Boards, which lets you stay connected and collaborate with others. Azure Pipelines. For example, Azure Pipelines can be used to create software deployable packages using the Build pipeline. Azure Test Plans, which can be used with RSAT for enable automation testing, majorly used in regression testing. Azure Repositories, which can be used to store source code, where different developers from different teams can collaborate with each other and share their source code as well as control their source code. And Azure also provides you with other artifacts. Lifecycle services is a central repository which is used for most of the tools that you need to prepare and deploy a project for finance and operations applications. LCS is a cloud-based collaboration workspace where all the key information about a project is stored and can be made available to the project members. LCS Project Workspace provides an outlined methodology showing each phase of your project and also provides high-level milestones that are used to track deliverables and project goals. The LCS project deployment allows you to deploy and control environments of different sizes from within the project. LCS provides environment-aware tools for various issues that might be occurring within the environment. For maybe like you can search for these tools, you can search for these issues with these known fixes and apply the fix to your environment in a very controlled manner. So Lifecycle Services acts as a hub for managing your environment. There are various functionalities and tools provided by LCS. So here are a few major ones. First of all, projects. Projects are the key organizers. So whenever you start with finance and operations, you start by creating a project. You create a project, you create a methodology, you connect your project to your methodology. Your methodology would have different phases. Could be like analysis, design, develop, test, and operate or deploy. And now, once you create a methodology and you associate your project with the methodology, then your project inherits all these phases. You can set up time frame for each of these phases. You can also invite members into your project. You invite members into your project and you can get started with your project. There are other tools available as well. For example, business process modeler, where you can define all the business processes that are used within your organization. You can define your business processes, including the sub processes as well. You would be able to set up Visual Studio Team Services, which is a previous name for Azure DevOps. You can now connect Azure DevOps to LCS. You can manage incidents by creating support tickets. You can manage your cloud hosted environments that are hosted in your Azure subscription or your partner Azure subscription. You can manage organizational users, provide various roles for these users. You can manage your solution. You can get support. You can avail support from Microsoft. There are asset libraries that can be accessed through LCS. There are two types of asset library. Your project-specific asset library that are storing your project-specific information like your configuration, your software deployable packages, your everything else related to your project. And then there are shared asset library provided by Microsoft with Microsoft artifacts. There are various downloadable tools, and you can also report production outage. There are configuration and data manager tools, code upgrade tiles to upgrade your code, is issue search tool to search for known issues within your environment, environment monitoring tools, tools that provides you with full system diagnostics, translation services for localizing, for regionalizing your application, RFP responses. You can find RFP responses on LCS. You can perform an upgrade analysis before an upgrade to identify major areas. You can identify the work items. You can run your subscription estimation to estimate the number of subscriptions that are required before you can license finance and operations for your organization. There are just-in-time features available as well. You can also set up update settings in LCS. So there are various tools provided by LCS, and understanding these tools and functionality is also very important for a solution architect. When it comes to disaster recovery for your environment, Azure SQL provides you with active geo-replication, which is configured for your production environment. Geo-redundant copies of your Azure blob storage containing your document attachment in other Azure regions. Same secondary region for Azure SQL and Azure blob storage replication also takes place. With that, we are done with the fourth module where we discussed environment planning. On a quick note, we have seen how environment planning is important for our implementation. We discussed various environment planning related concepts like the environment purposes, tiers, and topology. Various deployment strategies. We have talked about major tools that come handy whenever you're working with finance and operations. So we have LCS. LCS is used for environment monitoring, and LCS also provides you with various other tools for during which can be useful during various different phases of your implementation. We have Azure DevOps tool for source control. We've also discussed about various phases an implementation will go through, starting from analysis, design, develop, test, deploy, and operate. Throughout the life cycle of your application, you would be using Azure DevOps as well as LCS to manage various different aspects of your implementation. There are various tools available for analysis, for fit gap analysis and requirement analysis available on LCS. You would be storing your design, your developed code, etc. in Azure DevOps. You can create test plans in Azure DevOps and you can synchronize it with LCS. You would be deploying your production and you would be deploying your other environments and also would be requesting for production deployment from LCS. And while you're operating your application, there are several situations like issues that might occur where you will be using LCS and Azure DevOps for various things. So in this module, we discussed different aspects of environment planning. The major things that we talked about is you might require environments for development, for testing, etc. So based on the environment purpose, you are going to go with tier 1, tier 2, or other tier environments. Tier 1 is majorly used for development. And unit testing. Tier 2, majorly used for user acceptance testing. Tier 4, Tier 5, used for performance testing. Environment planning would also be a major component of your solution blueprint, which you're going to add on to your solution blueprint. With that said, let's move on to the next module. The next module that we are going to discuss here is data management strategy. In this module, we will talk about data management, the overview of data management. How can you develop a data migration strategy? Finance and operations uses a transactional database called AXDB. All your transactional data will be stored in AXDB. Finance and operations also have a database for reporting purposes, which is optimized for reporting, called AXDW. In your AXDB, there are different types of data that you will be storing. You will be storing your master data, your configuration data, historical data, as well as transactional data. Master data would be the nouns, information about people, things, places, etc. Your customers, your vendors, your products, etc. would be your master data. Master data is highly dependent on configuration. Configuration data can be either parameters or references. Parameters would be like units, dimensions, tax codes, currencies, number sequences, etc. can be your parameter data. Reference data may be like area code, zip code, small table including adding certain reference data. It will include reference parameter and group data. There can be historical data. Historical data must be from your legacy systems that are collected over years. So you would not be migrating these historical data unless it is required by law. You can archive this in historical data instead. Or maybe you can migrate your historical data into data warehouse. There can be transactional data like document data, like your sales orders, purchase orders. There can also be process transactions like invoices. These could be transactional data. So these are different types of data that you may have to manage when it comes to finance and operations in general. There are different tool sets and techniques that are available for data management. Different tools will be available during different phases of your development. Majorly, the three tools that we have for data management would be firstly, we have data management framework or the data management workspace that comes within the framework. So data management workspace has three sections. First section is a summary tile section where you've got all these tiles. And then we have got to list section. Let's start with the summary section. So this summary section allows you for importing data into finance and operations and also export data from finance and operations. Clicking on this tile creates a data project. A data project can be an import project, export project, configuration project, or an integration project. These data projects will contain manifests as well as project related files. You can download these as packages, and these packages can be used for repeated projects. You can create templates by adding the required data entities into them for easy creation of projects. Finance and operations also allows you to integrate with external data sources. You can configure your external database, Azure SQL database, to connect with finance and operations so that you can export your finance and operations data to this database. This feature is called as the BYOD feature. So you can configure your own data, you can create your own Azure SQL database, copy the connection string, you can configure this entity export to database from your configure entity to export database type. Additionally, you can view your data entities and also you can refresh your data entities from framework parameters. You would be cleaning your staging data. You can also set up roles for data project. You can copy data, not master data, but configuration data from one legal entity to another legal entity using copy into legal entity. But it always depends on the area in which you have defined your legal entity. There can be certain issues coming up whenever you're trying to copy data from one legal entity to another legal entity. Repetitive tasks can be automated using data task automation. So these are various capabilities of your data management framework where you can create various types of data projects. You can manipulate your data projects as well as you can keep track of your job history. There are other tools available on LCS for data management related purpose. You can back up your database. You can restore point in time refresh. You can refresh your database as well. There is also data sharing framework. Data can be shared among various different companies as well. So there are various tool sets available for data management. Whenever you store data in the database, you store the data in normalized fashion. For example, customer information would be spread across various tables. You would have cust table, dir table storing the party information. Location information would be stored in another table, maybe like address information in one table, rows in another table. So you can actually find data normalized and distributed among multiple tables, usually. Whereas whenever you're representing your data for import, export, or any other integrations, you are exposing this data in the form of data entities. Data entities are encapsulation of these underlying table. These are aggregated into these entities. For example, you can find entities for customer, wherein the users will only be able to see the relevant information. It hides the background info. Relevant information like maybe customer entity can have relevant information like account number, customer group, bank account, party number, which are actually coming from the existing tables, the underlying tables. So data entities can be created and used for various types of integrations. It can be used with synchronous integrations as well as it can be used with asynchronous integrations. Your data entities would encapsulate various tables, and various data entities can be put together into a data package. An entity and a package can together make a template. You can create templates. You can use templates. There are out-of-the-box templates available that are created and entities are sequenced within them so that you can use with your data projects. You can create your own template as well by including your data entities and data packages. Data management framework supports different kinds of integrations. It supports synchronous integrations with the help of OData. Data entities would enable public application programming interfaces like the APIs to be exposed, which enable synchronous services. OData is majorly used for office integrations, third-party mobile application integrations, etc. OData is not recommended for high volume or high frequency integrations. OData is used whenever you have small amount of data and the requirement is real time. Data management framework also supports asynchronous integrations. So you can make use of or you can use asynchronous integrations through a data management pipeline. So this method is used for file-based import or export or even for recurring integrations. By using the aggregate measures that are available in finance and operations, the built-in controls like charts, etc., you can integrate with Power Platform, which will provide you with higher insights into your business data. So you can integrate it with business intelligence as well. So data management framework allows you for synchronous service, asynchronous integration, as well as integrating with business intelligence. Once you create a data entity, it can be used across synchronous integration as well as asynchronous integration. Synchronous integration, especially using OData to connect with Excel or any third-party mobile application. Asynchronous integration for application lifecycle management and data migration. And you can also import demo or test data. Let's take a look at a few steps when you would be preparing for data migration. You would be choosing a data integration strategy, whether it is for import or export. You would be identifying common migration scenarios and tools in finance and operations applications. You would identify the volume of data, transformation, quality standards. You would be working with bring your own database feature, BYOD feature. You would be identifying relevant legacy system. You would be identifying and importing static data that is common between the industries. So these are the steps that will be performed during data migration. So you'll be testing your migration as well as validating your output. First of all, you would be identifying relevant system. You would be identifying and importing static data that is common between the industries. You would be creating review and test plans. For example, create backups of the system. If at all there is an error that is occurring during migration, you can reset the data or you can reset the database to the previous state. You can identify and extract the source data. Identify data entities and elements, generate field mapping, also support this transition throughout. Combine frameworks and tools to optimize your data migration. So this is going to be like a repeated process. Throughout the application lifecycle or throughout your go live, you would be working with data packages, integrations, data entities. You would be testing, validating, performing cut over, and everything. So now let's move on to see how exactly we are going to develop a data migration strategy. First of all, define scenarios, data entities, and data owners. Identify all the data migration scenarios and relevant legacy system. Evaluate appropriate custom or data entities for all scenarios and perform mapping to the source data. Define data migration tools for export and import. Plan efforts and assign data owners for data transformation, testing, migration, and validation. Align the environment plan to data migration. Plan for at least one tier 2 or higher environment. Plan a separate golden configuration environment locked down to core users only. Plan data movements between environments, legal entities from legacy system or to third-party applications. Create a migration plan for your configuration and transaction data. Document your cutover plan, data migration sequences and dependencies. Consider migration of master and transactional data as delta data migration. Do it in incremental fashion. Plan data transformation and data validation for data migration iterations. Plan to execute iterative data migration cycles, verify performance, and perform optimization and tuning. Use import in batch instead of interactive import. Use standard fields and tables where possible. Use set-based processing for bulk data import. Adapt data entities for performance where necessary. Consider security rules for sensitive data migration and testing purposes. So this is how you would be developing a data migration strategy. To revise, you would be defining scenarios, entities, and data owners. You'd be aligning the environment plan to data migration. You'd be configuring transaction and data migration plan, your transaction and historical data migration plan. So this is how you would develop a data migration strategy. Develop a cutover plan early and revisit often. For cutover plan, document all data entities, dependencies, and sequencing for data migration. Plan start and end time cutover activities. Communicate your cutover plans to your implementation team. Involve business users as well. Identify responsibilities for cutover tasks. Consider data migration. Some manual data entry must also be required. Start early. Review and enhance your cutover plan regularly during your implementation. Also define a data retention plan. Data retention refers to continual or persistent storage of data for business operations and compliance purposes. To ensure compliance, the solution architect needs to identify the type of data that is being stored in the system and also various customer specific laws and regulations like GDPR for people who are residing in European Union, how to handle redundant data, how to clean up your data cleanup related things. So you would also be defining a data retention plan. With that said, we are done with the fifth module. In this module, we discussed about data strategy. So first of all, we talked about various data management related concepts, which includes data entities, data projects, data packages, etc. We have talked about data management framework slash workspace, which is provided by finance and operations to manage your data. This workspace allows you to view all your data entities, to view your data, to view, refresh data entities, create new data projects. So these can also be recurring projects. Create templates, which can be used in your repetitive projects, etc. We've talked about other tools that are available within LCS, which can be used for your data management. We have also talked about how to develop a data strategy. What are the things that are to be kept in mind while developing a data strategy? And also data retention planning. Coming to data entities are the conceptual abstraction of underlying data in the table. Data is stored in your AXDB, in your finance and operations database, in a normalized fashion. Now, when you're trying to extract the data, or whenever you're trying to integrate finance and operations with external systems, let it be for BYOD or any other factors, data entities are the ones that are exposed to these external systems. Data entities are the conceptual abstraction of this underlying data. Which does not have any physical existence. So they are just conceptual abstraction of underlying data. So data is exposed in the form of data entities. A data entity created can be used across various kind of integrations. It can be used with synchronous mode. It can also be used in asynchronous mode. So there would be several underlying tables and you would have one data entity. So whenever you are creating your own data entity, you will have to keep in mind that performance is also a major factor when it comes to data entities. Add only those fields that are required for your integration scenario. So adding more number of fields are going to deteriorate the performance of your data entities. So these data entities can be used across various types of integrations for including BYOD. BYOD is a feature that is available wherein you can create your own Azure SQL DB, your own Azure SQL DB, and configure export to this DB. So you can choose your data entities that can be exported to this external DB. Why exactly do we use this? Since finance and operations expose data only in the form of data entities, there are certain applications or certain systems that might not be able to process these data entities. For such situations, you can export these data entities to your own Azure SQL DB. From there, these .NET applications or any other applications that may not use TSQL can access this data and work with this data. Data entities can also be exposed using OData for synchronous integration, which is especially used whenever you are integrating with Microsoft's Excel. With that said, we are done with module number 5, which is determining data strategy. Let's move on to the 6th module, which talks about integration and interface strategies. In this lesson, we will be developing an integration strategy and we'll also see various integration options. When discussing integration scenarios and requirements with a client, solution architect should always understand and explain the overall integration architecture for finance and operations applications when required. In the figure that you see here, you can see the overall integration platform. Azure SQL database is not exposed and it is not possible to access it directly. Data entity is an updatable view of tables with some business logic that are tied to it. So once a data entity is defined, it can be exposed to OData stack. And the same data entity can be exposed to data management framework. So both data management framework and OData stack uses data entities. OData is a REST-based service through which calls can be made to the data entities, and you can also implement actions on a data entity. For example, data entity that calls sales orders, there can be like a confirm or a post action. It can be used for both data and process integrations. The same data entity can be consumed by data management framework as well, in which it uses asynchronous high volume. It is like asynchronous high volume interface. So if you have thousands of records that you may want to bring like in bulk, and you can make use of data management framework. In small number of scenarios, you may make use of SOAP-based integration. This is called as custom services. So whenever your requirements are ad hoc and you may sometimes require flexible kind of requirements, you may make use of SOAP-based integrations. Business events are also used. Business events are used to send out notifications to external systems. And we have a feature called as dual write. Dual write is a feature that allows integration between finance and operations data with Dataverse. Initial synchronization is done via CDS-DI and data management framework, and they are kept in sync with the help of OData calls after that. So this is an example of an overall integration platform. So it is important for us to understand this as well as explain this if required. So here it shows integration technologies for Dynamics 365. Sometimes partners and customers decide to take hybrid approach for building integrations, especially if the client already has invested in existing middleware like integration platforms. So you can evaluate it and can be reused for cloud to cloud scenarios, or you can use cloud middleware for integrations. Most of the middleware can interact with F&O, with finance and operations using HTTP. Now, coming to what is an integration pattern? There are various patterns available. So the major patterns are synchronous integrations. Let's talk about a few major integration patterns. Real time, non-real time. Or you can say synchronous and asynchronous integrations. So there would also, these are various requirements that you may have. Sometimes you may be dealing with small amount of data, and sometimes you may be dealing with huge amount of data. For non-real-time requirements, sometimes you may see these requirements are frequent, say every day at 10 p.m. Sometimes these requirements can be ad hoc. Now, whenever you're dealing with real-time requirements with small amount of data, we usually go with OData pattern. Whenever you're dealing with non-real-time or maybe like even and huge amount of data and is frequent, recurring, you go with batch data API. Whenever the requirements are ad hoc, dealing with variable amount of data and both real and non-real time requirements can be done with the help of custom services. Like you use SOAP and JSON. These are various patterns that you might see. So the major factors when you're choosing a pattern would be, first of all, latency, whether you need data synchronously or asynchronously. Secondly, the frequency, whether it is high frequency or low frequency, medium frequency, etc. And then the triggers, what operations that you may want to perform, whether it is create, read, update, delete, etc. The volume of data, whether it is small amount of data or a huge amount of data, batching, like batch data, unbatched, what are the transfer protocol that you might want to use. Based on this, you can choose between various integration strategies. So the major integration strategies that you would be choosing would be core data, batch data API, or custom services. With that said, we are going to move on to the next concept, which is dual write. Dual write is one of the important concepts when it comes to Dynamics 365. Dual write makes Dynamics 365 one-stop shop for all your business requirements. So we need to understand what is dual write. Finance and operations or Dynamics 365 applications can be divided into two major categories. You can see the ERP applications, which are your finance and operations applications, and also there are CRM applications or the customer engagement applications. The major finance and operations applications that you might find are D365 Finance, Human Resources, Supply Chain Management, and Commerce. And the major customer engagement applications that you see are D365 Sales, Marketing, Field Service, and Customer Service. These applications are Power Apps, built on Power Platform. Since they are Power Apps, I would say model-driven Power Apps built on Power Platform. Since they are model-driven Power Apps built on Power Platforms, they use Dataverse as their data platform. Now, dual write is a feature that enables integration Dual write is a feature that enables integration between finance and operations DB and Dataverse. These integrations are bidirectional near real-time integrations. That means whenever you enable dual write for, let's say, an entity in finance and operations, let's say sales orders entity in finance and operations, whenever you enable dual write, any changes that happens to this entity, maybe like a create, a read, an update, or a delete on this, will affect the sales entity within Dataverse. That means it in turn is going to affect Dynamics 365 sales, marketing, customer service, and field service applications. Any changes that happens inside Dataverse will be instantly written into finance and operations as well. So this change is bidirectional and it happens near real time. If at all the systems are offline, the moment systems go back online, the changes are propagated back and forth. Dual Write makes Dynamics 365 one-stop shop for all the business requirements. There are various use cases of Dual Write. It can be used across field service, customer service, etc., to integrate finance and operations data with these applications. So here are a few features of Dual Write. You would not require any middleware between finance and operations and customer engagement applications. Any crude operations in finance and operations will result in writes in Dataverse and vice versa. For master data, reference data, business documents, sales orders, etc. Data from finance and operations are natively available in Dataverse. Uh, More data entities can be added by making use of virtual entities feature. It allows for finance and operations extensions with Power Platform. It can be set up easily from LCS during your environment provisions. There are various considerations related to this. For example, it cannot be used at the same time with data integrator, especially like in your prospect to cash solution. It does not support, it does not provide support in trial versions. It does not support cross company data sharing. And there can be certain maintenance downtimes with it. Apart from that, Dataverse makes it very convenient to integrate various data. You can get an integrated customer master table, integrated vendor master table, on-demand price engine experience, project to cash experience. All these can be achieved with the help of Dual Write. Dual Write is tightly coupled, near real time, and bi-directional integration between finance and operations and the customer engagement applications. With that said, we are moving on to the next concept, which is business events. Business events provides you with a mechanism where it allows external systems receive notifications from finance and operations applications. In this way, the systems can perform business actions in response to business events. A business event will occur whenever a business process is running. So during a business process, users who are participating in it perform various business actions to complete tasks that make up the business process. A business action can be like a workflow action or even a non-workflow action. For example, approval of purchase requisition could be a workflow action, whereas confirmation of a purchase order would be a non-workflow action. So both types of action can generate business events that would want external systems to receive notifications. So we create this with the help of business events. There are a few prerequisites, like business events can be consumed using Microsoft Power Automate and Azure messaging services. Therefore, customers should bring their subscriptions, their Power Automate subscription, as well as Azure messaging services subscriptions to use with business events. So there are various endpoints that are supported, like Azure Bus Service Queue, Azure Service Bus Topic, Event Grid, Event Hub, HTTPS, Power Automate. So there are many out-of-the-box business events available in finance and operations. You can enable these business events. You can add endpoints. It can be used with both workflow and non-workflow user actions. It can be consumed with the help of your already existing subscriptions for Power Automate and Azure Message Services. There are certain recommendations like use business events for asynchronous integrations, verify your customer subscription for Power Automate and Azure services if at all you're using it for business events. Business events are not recommended for large volumes of data export scenarios. Azure integration services are kind of like used for cloud, on premises, and hybrid integration scenarios with Dynamics 365 finance and operations. And you might find integration with Azure integration services, logic apps, service bus, API management, as well as event grid. There can also be various integrations with Microsoft 365, integrations with Outlook. You can configure and send emails from Dynamics 365 Finance and Operations. Integrate with Excel. You can download, transform, and update data in finance and operations with the help of Dynamics Excel add-in. This can use real-time integration. So you can open your file in Excel. So any changes that you do onto the Excel file will be instantly propagated to Dynamics 365 and vice versa. You can use Excel for electronic reporting document templates as well. You can integrate with Word. You can integrate with MS Teams. So you can use D365 Human Resources application in Microsoft Teams. You can integrate with SharePoint. You can store and share documents from Dynamics 365 Finance and Operations applications on SharePoint as well. You can consume external web services. Now, coming to developing an integration strategy, let's take a look at the steps that are required or that you are going to take in order to develop an integration strategy. Let's see how to develop an integration strategy. So your integration strategy would be a part of your solution blueprint implementation project. First of all, there are various aspects of integration so that you would be taking care of. First of all, identify integration scenarios and requirements. So how would you identify your integration scenarios and requirements? There can be various scenarios. So your scenarios could be asking for a real-time integration. It can be asking for a non-real-time integration. It can be asking, there could be a requirement with huge amount of data. There could be an requirement with small amount of data, or your integration would require you to integrate on a regular basis every day at 9 a.m. Or maybe it can be ad hoc, like whenever you need a particular information, you may want to integrate it with a solution. First of all, you identify your integration scenarios and requirements. So your customers would already have certain integration platforms that are already used. So identify the integration platforms used by the customer. So identify the existing integration platforms that are used by the customer. In the next step, which is the most important step, where you are going to document all required integrations. And interfaces. including the frequency of your integration pattern, whether the integration needs to be real time or not, requirements for the peak data volume, frequency, requirement. All that will be documented. Where exactly are we going to document it? You are going to use the solution blueprint document to document all these requirements. Next, you are going to select a technology. Select an integration technology. And also verify whether you have appropriate licensing for that. Verify your licenses for the same. Once a technology is chosen, now you are accountable to explain this or you're going to explain integration technology benefits and advantages to the customer. As the next step for eligible customers, you can discuss the integration in solution blueprint review, and you can run an integration strategy workshop with fast track solution architect. So for eligible customers. For eligible customers, integrations can be discussed in the solution blueprint review workshop. And also you can run a test strategy with fast track. As seventh step, you would be including your integration considerations in your application lifecycle management and environment planning. Include integration considerations in application lifecycle management and environment planning. This would be running document, so revisit and review the strategy regularly. Identify roles and definitions, or identify your roles and different integration actions that you might perform. Identify roles. The next step, which would be the last step, you should be considering security. So whenever you are developing an integration strategy, at the same time, you should be considering security. Consider security and compliance. So this is how you would be developing an integration strategy. Let's revise. First of all, we are going to identify integration scenarios and requirements. We're going to identify the integration platforms that are already used by the customer. We're going to document all the required integrations and interfaces, including the peak data volume, frequency, requirements, etc. We will be selecting an integration technology. At the same time, we'll be verifying licenses associated with it. We'll be explaining this integration technology benefits and advantages to the customers. And for eligible customers, you can discuss these integrations in solution blueprint review. You can run an integration strategy with the fast track and also include your integration considerations in application lifecycle management and environment planning. This is a running document. You would be revisiting this document and reviewing it from time to time. You would also be identifying roles and other integration actions. Also consider security and compliance requirements for every integration scenario. With that said, we are done with this module. Let's do a quick revision of what we have learned today. So we started off with environments today. We discussed 3 modules: environment planning, data strategy, and integration strategy. In environment planning, we talked about different types of environments that you would be using within for finance and operations implementations. You would have environments for different purposes: build purpose, test purpose, etc. And based on the requirement, you would be using different types of environment. Let's move back and do a quick revision of what we have done today. We discussed about various environment purposes, various environment topologies, various environment tiers, and various deployment strategies as well. For different tiers, there can be different deployment options provided. Whenever a new developer joins your organization, you would or you would these users would be using different types of environment. Tier 1 for development, testing, tier 4, 5 for performance related testing. With the standard cloud offering, you get one tier 2 environment, and which is a standard acceptance test environment, and one production environment. Any additional environments that you might require would be bought as an add-on environment, which would be purchased in addition to your standard option. You can have an additional tier 1 environment which can be managed within your or your partner's Azure subscription and can be cloud hosted. So an environment VHD or image or can be hosted on premises using a virtual hard disk that can be downloaded from lifecycle services. So for different purposes, you would be selecting or choosing different kinds of environment. You would be maintaining a matrix that includes all these different environment types, as well as the purpose of the environments and what are the number of environments that you would be requiring. For that, it is important to understand the difference between tier 1, tier 2, and other environments, including the purposes. We have discussed different deployment options, such as cloud and on-premises. Cloud is when you are allowing Microsoft to completely manage your application, including the updates as well to the application. So it provides, it is easy to scale up or scale down at any point in time because these are hosted on cloud. Whereas whenever you are deciding to host it on premises in your own or your partner managed infrastructure, you would be you should be creating provisions for various data loss, data disaster recovery related plannings as well. And availability is also up to you. So if at all you require more granular control over the data as well as availability related things, you would be going on premises. Application lifecycle management is really important for any application. So applications can go through 5 major phases. So depending upon the methodology that you are using within your organization, you may be going with waterfall methodology, you may be going with agile methodology, you may be going with spiral methodology. So for projects where you kind of know the requirements beforehand, so waterfall methodology is chosen whenever you know Waterfall methodology is chosen whenever you know the requirements beforehand. So waterfall methodology is like a one way. So you start with collecting all the requirements. Once all the requirements are collected and you kind of lock your requirements at this point, and you would not be adding any additional requirements after that. Once you are done collecting all the requirements, you are moving on to the next stage, which is going to be designing. You would be designing your project and you would move on to development. So at this point, you're going to lock this as well. No new designs will be added. You start developing. Once development is done, you're going to test your solution. Once the testing is done, you're going to move on to implementing your solution, maybe like deploy it and then operate it. So any changes has to be taken care separately to a change management cycle. So waterfall methodology is chosen if you have your requirements beforehand and ready, and there are no changes in the requirements, and the requirements are pretty consistent. Agile methodology is chosen if at all you do not have all the requirements beforehand. You kind of start with an idea, maybe like a plan. You design it, you develop it, you test it, and you let users use it. I would say this happens like a circle. And this is preferable when you do not have any requirements beforehand and you are okay with multiple releases. You can find multiple releases in this particular methodology. So based on the feedback, you would be developing new solutions. For complex requirements, we have spiral methodologies. It combines both waterfall and agile. So you would start with a plan, you would create, you would develop, you would test, you would get feedback. Based on that, you plan the next cycle. You continue this until you realize or you get an operational prototype. Once you find an operational prototype, you perform a detailed planning, detailed coding, detailed testing, and you come up with your final application. So spiral methodologies are used whenever your requirements are not known initially, and for complex systems, we make use of spiral methodologies. So regardless of the methodology that is being used by the organization, you would be managing these methodologies with the help of lifecycle services. Lifecycle services provides you with various tools. And as you can see, there are various tools that are provided by lifecycle services, including business process modeling, environment monitoring tools, and you can manage your ALM methodologies, etc., using lifecycle services. So there are various tools that are provided, and there are various factors that you may have to process, that you may have to manage as well. Apart from lifecycle services, we have also got Azure DevOps, which is also used for collaboration, source control, and quality control among developers and other operational users. It is important to understand the features and the capabilities of Microsoft Power Platform so that if required, you would be able to extend your finance and operations applications. Azure DevOps is a suite of services that provides you with end-to-end tools for building, testing, and deploying of your applications to any cloud or on-premises. Lifecycle services is a central repository for a lot of tools, including issue search, where you can search for known issues and apply those fixes to your current environment. These are various tools that are available in LCS. You have tools like business process modeler, asset library, shared asset library, issue search, environment monitoring, system diagnostics, etc. So you can perform all these actions through lifecycle services to manage your environments. For disaster recovery, Azure enables a geo-replication of your data that is stored in Azure Blob Storage. Creates a geo-redundant copy of your Azure Blob Storage. With that, that's the wrap for module number 4. Real quick, we are going to wrap up module 5 and module 6 together. So together, we need to understand various concepts related to data. Data entities. What are data entities? What are the different types of data that you can find? And how exactly a data entity can be used across various different types of integrations. We need to understand different tools that are available for data management. We've got LCS, we have got data sharing framework, we have data management framework. Allows you to perform various actions on data. And we need to understand how a data entity can be created and also how it aggregates various elements within it. So once a data entity is created, it supports or it can be used across synchronous as well as asynchronous integrations. Whenever you are preparing for data migration, the first thing that you would do would be choosing a strategy. You would identify common scenarios between finance and operations and the existing systems so that you can bring in all the static data. You can import static data, create test plan, identify your source data, extract it, generate mapping, say that the data maybe like field A in my system A is field B in my system B. This kind of field mapping has to be generated and also support the transition and validate whether the data is perfect or not. Validate the data count, validate the number of your ledger balances, validate if the number of sales orders are right. So all those kind of validations can be done. And summarize, you would be finally developing a data migration strategy to add on to your solution blueprint document. You'll be defining scenarios, data entities, data owners, aligning your environment plan to data migration. You would be configuring your transaction data migration plan as well. I'm going to let you spend some time with the slide. With that said, let's quickly summarize module number 6, where we have talked about integration and interface strategies. So we discussed how data integration works, what are the different integration scenarios and patterns that are available. We have talked about the dual write feature, where it connects finance and operations data with the data that is residing inside Dataverse. We've talked about business events. Business events are a way in which external systems can receive notifications from Dynamics 365 Finance and Operations. So it can be consumed by Power Automate and Azure messaging services with your existing licenses. So verify your existing licenses. If at all they are existing already, you can be using it with your business events. It also allows other Microsoft 365 integrations like integration with Outlook, integration with Excel, integration with Word, integration with Teams, SharePoint, etc. So here are some sample phases of an environment plan for your reference. So we have included certain phases, as you can see, and an environment plan is created from January through June. And you can see the dates on which these phases would be running. So this is how a sample phases of an environment plan would look like. You can take a moment with the slide. Moving on, here is a sample environment plan with color coding. So there are various activities happening which are color coded in yellow. Go live is marked in red. Environment types are in this turquoise color. Green stands for the cloud hosted environments. We have VHDs in yellow. Production environment is coded in purple. So let's take a look at a sample environment plan. So is happening. For each of these different activities, you may need different types of environments. You may need production environment, you may need dev environment, you may need sandbox environments or other kinds of environment. Each system or each environment would be given a unique environment ID as well. CDS types stands for the environment types in Dataverse. Certain situations, and phases would also require a CDS environment. So you would be mentioning your CDS environment as well. Unlike Dynamics 365 Finance and Operations environment, CDS environment types would be development, sandbox, production. And you would also be providing a unique ID for your common data service environment. So here is another sample environment plan with color coding. So with that said, we are done for today. So we have discussed 3 modules today: environment planning, data migration strategies, and data integration strategies. Thank you so much, everyone.